how would you write an unreliable narrator or an untrusting environment in a book or a movie? I don't think this is a very rare phenomenon, I think this is very common, but I do think it's very interesting because it's done in such different ways. Every form of media has its own form of limitations and advantages, and I think that is why some form of media is so horribly translated from one source to another, because that story is dependent on that media. That's what I want to talk about in this video, why some stories that might work in a book might not work in a movie, especially in unreliable narrators or in untrusting environments. Before this video begins, I just want to address that I am working a lot on a lot of different things right now. My scheduling will be a bit messy. I am planning to upload another Fierce to Phantom playthrough, so if you're interested in that, subscribe. I just want to address that depicting the same story in different forms of media is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it fits better in a different form of media, but the thing I'm trying to get at is that every form of media has their own different ways to tell this story, and you have to take that into account before you make the story, because just translating the story sometimes just doesn't work. And books are so thriving in unreliable narrators. Why? Because you get to experience the main character's inner monologue and their stream of thought. It's about playing with expectations. It's not really about how we show the different form of media or what the different media really is. It's about what we're used to in that media. We're used to movies depicting sort of a honest-ish reality. We're used to games depicting a kind of a quiet main character, and we're used to books depicting a very interesting main character, the one that you're allowed to like set your teeth into and like analyze, because you're supposed to be related, because you see the world from their perspective. And that is just because we're used to that. Not every book is formed like that, not every game is formed like that, not every movie is formed like that. But you have to have a form of expectation to be able to subvert it. You have to have that trust into the character to be able to break that trust. And I think movies can do that, but we don't have that as intuitively as we do in books. And this is the main reason I want to be making this video in the first place, because an untrusting environment and not be able to rely on what you're hearing and the information you're getting is what made me so incredibly interested in books. Annihilation is a movie I fell in love with almost immediately. I'm a sucker for cosmic horror, and this was one of my first experiences to that. And I think it has one of the creepiest monsters these stories have had. I saw the movie way before I read the book. The story about a team of scientists who explore a bubble that is slowly absorbing Earth. They quickly realize while they are inside of this bubble that everything inside of this bubble is evolving with everything else. It's kind of like when you have a glass of water and you drop a little drop of paint inside of it. You can see the paint and you can separate the paint from the water, but the longer the paint is in there, the more it just becomes the same. After a certain point, you aren't able to separate it. That is all I'm going to be talking about with Annihilation the movie, because now I'm going to be talking about Annihilation the book. So, after reading the book, I fell in love with this story all over again. So this is Annihilation, the good version. The story is kind of the same, but not really. What I just told you, it's the same, but the movie adds a bunch of things and the books has a bunch of things that the movie doesn't. But what I just told you is happening in the book as well. One of the huge differences between the book and a movie is that this is a book and not a movie. In a movie, you're kind of experiencing everything from a bird's eye view. You see the world, and sure, the truth might be manipulative, and we're gonna get to examples of when that is happening, but you're still seeing it from a much more honest and separate opinion than from the main character. But in a book, you are very, very much seeing, smelling, and feeling the world through the main character and through Lena in this book. Obviously, this is only the case where books are from a first-person kind of view. Like, there are books that are just from a bird's eye view like a movie, but that's not the books that I'm talking about right now. What is so interesting about Annihilation being a part of Unreliable Narrator is that they're scientists. They're supposed to say everything objectively, and they are primed to do so. She doesn't even know the names of her colleagues, the people that she's gonna spend most likely the last days of her life with, because knowing their name would be too personal of an information. She might have some bias against that. And that is such an interesting concept to set a unreliable narrator in that universe. A universe where they really tries not to be. It's cool. It's a cool idea. Annihilation is a book about control. And I think that is important to acknowledge even now, because having the control that Lena tries to have as having this objective view of the story is not possible. The longer she is in this world, the longer she is lying to the audience and misrepresenting what's actually going on, even though she's trying not to. It's about that lack of control, even over herself. She wants this story to be solely about physical being, about what is physically going on, but the longer she's in there, the more it's about her mental state, about how she's feeling, because that is slowly affecting the reality around her. So ignoring that would be a misrepresentation of reality in a weird way. So again, the book is about, and the story is about, a bubble slowly mixing everything together. And she gets the problem that she cannot separate her physical being from her mental one. She doesn't really know what's going on. Her conscious world and her physical world is mixing because her evolutionary cells are literally mixing with the world. Like, it's such a clear analysis and comparison between how she is trying to have these scraps of control, but inside of this bubble you just slowly losing everything you have. And it's written in such a clever way. Like, if it was written from a bird's eye view, this story would not work. It wouldn't make sense. It would be like the movie. Because what I believe, I'm not talking for everyone, but what I believe is the reason this depiction of the story being part of the story, the media, the form it's written is part. That's a symbolism of how the character is feeling. Lena's inner demons slowly become just as much her outside demons as any monster she's meeting out there. I know I already had a visual spoiler warning, but I'm saying it again because even though I've been spoiling a lot, I'm gonna be spoiling more. And the big thing I'm gonna be spoiling to be able to analyze this is that at the end, you realize that the whole book is written by her. It's her story that she's writing. So in the beginning of the story, she's writing everything as clearly as she remembers it, because the end of the story is the thing that is closest to her in reality. Which is incredibly interesting because in the beginning of the story, it's way more concrete and it's way more objective, and the longer the story goes on, the more it just fades into the world. But it should be the opposite. You should have a recency bias and be able to remember the things that just happened the clearest. But this is clear now what's going on. It's her memory is switching in reverse. The longer she's in there, the more she just becomes this brown liquid. See, I connected it to paint again. That's how smart I am. I'm kidding. In certain places of Annihilation, she even goes back into the story to tell you that she wasn't completely honest while telling it. She is changing reality, but not because she wants to seem like a better person or to have some kind of a moral high ground, but because telling the truth would seem insane, and she wants to seem normal to you as the reader, because that is a huge part of Annihilation. She values the audience's opinion of Lena. She values it so high, and so she sometimes is retrospectively. That's what I was trying. And this is such an interesting way to depict her insecurities about herself, because instead of just stating it and showing it in her conversation with others, she's literally showing it to the conversation and the relationship she has to us, the reader. Because again, this is the end of the book. She's writing this story, and again, spoiler alert, she expects herself to die. So she has no real value of providing honesty to the reader. Yet she is. Or at least yet she is desperately trying to, and failing. Because again, she's going to die in this place, most likely. That's what she's expecting to do. And just like the countless people before her, like her husband, they have given up a piece of their story to future people that are willing to read it. But what they usually do is that they're giving up like their diary or something similar to that. But she's choosing not to do that. She's choosing to write her own story. Or that's at least how I understood it. She is rewriting her story, which is again such a clear example of her having this lack of control. She's telling this story to future potential scientists, but she wants to be the narrator of that story. And I think it's such a symbol of lack of control, because she isn't trying to manipulate the story. She's trying to do the opposite. She's trying to be as honest as she can be, which she's failing at, but she's really trying, because she so desperately wants that relationship with the audience is how she has the relationship with herself. She sees her story being written out, and she wants to be able to know what people are judging her for, because that is also what this book being judged. And I know that sounds strange. I know if you haven't read the book, that sounds, if you haven't read the book and just seen the movie, that sounds completely out of left field. In her regular day-to-day life, she is talking about how she likes to observe ecosystem and see how these different life forms interact with each other, being able to imagine such a different life from yourself. But what she is the most afraid of is to no longer be the one observing, to be observed, because that is what this alien is not landing on Earth because he wants to invade it, at least not purposefully. He just wants to see how the world looks like. She taps into Lena, and maybe I should explain that actually, because I'm not explaining. In the end of the book and the movie, there's this alien, or this other creature that is just kind of there, and they have a bit of a weird relationship with Lena. They meet, and then she experiences a lot of pain and a lot of weird feelings, and then Lena is managing to escape, and she doesn't really understand what the creature wanted, but it definitely wanted something. And what I believe is that they just wanted to observe. They just wanted to see how the world looks like. They just wanted to just tap into Lena, to like feel how it feels like to be Lena for a split moment. The movie suggests that she does this because she wants to replace Lena, because this is all part of some masterful plan. But I think that kind of breaks the point. Like, the point is that there is no real point. This alien just wants to see how it feels like to be Lena, what kind of emotions she has. She sees the world so differently from us, so just us even trying to imagine it is pointless. It's kind of like when you dip your toe into water before you jump in. Like, you just do it because you want to get a little bit of the experience, you know, get to feel how the water feels like, and get the knowledge of how the water is, how warm it is, how it feels, before you make like a huge commitment. And I know that analogy is completely stolen by the egg, which is Andy Ware, my brother in Christ. The creature doesn't care if Lena is experiencing this in an awful and painful way, because why would it? It's kind of like picking up a fish from an ocean and looking at it and just being like, this is a fish, and then throwing it back in the ocean. That's what the alien is doing to Lena. And we see that as merciful. We see that as nice. Wow, you picked up a fish and you like showed it around, and you were like kind to it, and you didn't kill it. See, that's fishing like in a good way. I'm not saying that I'm not I'm not against like fishing or anything. I'm just saying that we as humans see that as being like merciful. But we would hate being on the other side of that interaction. And that is what Lena is experiencing. She picks up little animals all the time, analyzes them, and like do experiments. I don't know if she does experiments. I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, like when you're like out in the forest and you just like pick up a bug that you see, you look at it and you put it back. Like, yeah, for you it's not like anything big. But for them it must be world changing. It must be so terrifying and so unimaginable scary. Just a simple thing as like many animals that are flipped upside down just cannot get back, like they die, like turtles and stuff like that. So us just picking up a turtle, they must have the instinct that they are going to die, because that's what they're evolutionary built to like be prepared for. And that is probably what Lena is experiencing now. It's so different and so weird that her whole body is just screaming, stop, something is wrong. And the only way our body can like scream stop is pain. It's just, and I'm sure this alien doesn't mean to cause Lena any pain, but it does, and it doesn't care. And that is so fucking genius, like, because that is the thing that Lena is like the scared of the most. No reason, just no control and no reason for actions, because that is what this creature is doing. It's just choosing to do something because it has a reason for it, but Lena doesn't understand it, and Lena cannot understand it because Lena is not at the same wavelength as this creature. So what does Lena do? She escapes. I don't know if it's just the alien that doesn't care about her anymore, but she escapes and rewrites her whole experience in Area X. That is only self of control that she feels like she has left. So how does that not translate into the movie? Well, they like didn't address this at all. Like, it's clear that I'm a sucker for media that addresses its own kind of self to be able to tell their story. Well, this doesn't work in the movie because it's not a story. Like, you see everything happening as if it's happening. And sure, they could have addressed it in a better way. They could have had like some sort of a narrator. Maybe she's telling this story, and then in the end you get to realize that she was actually just telling it to herself somehow. But they're choosing not to do that. And that's weird. It's kind of like In the Heights. In the Heights, the musical is just a plain story about a guy working in a store and a bunch of things happen. But then they made a movie version, and it's actually about him telling the story to a couple of children. They kind of like did what Annihilation is doing, but backwards. And I'm not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. It just depends on what kind of a story you're trying to say. And it's clear that Annihilation, the movie, is not trying to tell the same story as Annihilation, the book, is. The one time I at least remember, it was a while ago I watched this movie, but the one time I remember that they really did acknowledge this lack of perspective and trying to follow the main character. So right when they get into the bubble in the beginning, she loses her memory. She doesn't remember how she got there, it just snaps and she's just in. She just wakes up in the bubble. And we as the audience, okay, we did see her like go in, but not... Well, we saw her go in from the outside, but not from the inside. Anyway, our perspective is like reflecting how she saw it, because she doesn't remember how she like got in there. She just remembers going in there, and then she is there. And that is reflecting on us, because they're not showing that us. We cannot remember something that they didn't show us, you know? I really like this, and I just wish they did more of this, but I kind of also do appreciate that they didn't, because it's so different from the book. So I do kind of appreciate that they didn't really try. Like, it would have been worse if they tried but then like didn't really do it, because that would have been just so unsatisfying. That would have been you just sitting there and be like, oh, you should have been like the book, which I don't feel like now in the movie. Now I just feel like it's a completely retelling of the same story, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can still be a worse thing than the book, which I think it is. But it is kind of giving the same vibe as...
I don't remember any of that. I must have blacked out. Maybe I should lay off the alcohol for... And I said, you're sitting on the pizza, Mr. President. Whoa! I think I just had another one.
Another what? Pizza?
No, blackout. The thing we were just talking about.
And another big change that they deliberately made is that they made the monster or the alien somehow more like the Thing. It's if you think that it replaces Lena in the end, or whatever you think the ending is supposed to mean, is up to you. But whatever you think, it's clear that the alien is choosing a higher value of Lena than the book version is. And I think that is like a huge difference to make, because that is kind of like one of the points in Annihilation, the book, is that the alien does not care about her. And That is so terrifying. That's such a terrifying feeling that an alien would approach Earth, not because it wants to destroy us or get our resources or anything like that, but it just like felt like it, and it has no reason to do it, and just us trying to understand the reason is just a waste of energy. That is so cool. That is such a cool concept, and I'm so angry that they like remove that, but I'm also happy. Like, in the book it's cool, yes, but it's cool because they have primed us with everything, like that she cares so much about analyzing different forms of species and understanding things. She doesn't really care that much about that in the movie, and because of that, it doesn't feel like it like comes out of a left field that they would remove this. It makes sense. It's not like a story arc. Like, I feel like maybe they would have done better if they waited a couple of years and then made the Annihilation into a series, so they could actually give more time to explore the characters. Maybe this is just my personal opinion. Maybe I think most of the times books are better as TV series than movies, especially good books. Like, I was talking about this shit, the Midnight Library. That one can absolutely become a movie, and I think that shows the lack of space and like and the continuity and like rhythm that the book has. I want to talk about that more. I want to talk about books that like are so clearly trying to be movies, because it's just not, and they shouldn't pretend like they are. I don't know. Now let's walk away from Annihilation. I know this majority of this video is gonna be about Annihilation, but I want to walk away from it a little bit and just another story that does this in a very different way, because this does it in a more basic way, I would say. The most common way to depict this kind of unreliable narrator is to have the ideology of the author or the narrator being shown throughout the pages without being extremely obvious about it, but still being obvious enough that they're trying to manipulate the story. A very clear and a classic example of that is the book Lolita. I want to be talking about Lolita, but it's a book written by Vladimir Nabokov. This is an extremely classic way to depict how he's manipulating the audience to make his actions of being interested in 9-year-olds justifiable, which is not, I know, controversial opinion, but he really is trying his hardest to make it seem like it is. I want to be talking about this, like I want to address this book because it's such a clear example of unreliable narrator, but I want the whole video to be about Lolita. Like, it doesn't deserve this little piece in the middle like this is. While I'm just giving up like honorable mentions that I might talk about, The Velveteen Rabbit, amazing, like a cool story. I would qualify this as unreliable narrator because this isn't even a narrator from a person, it's like narrator from a toy that believes it's alive. But anyway, Lolita. So I think what is very clear about Lolita and about Annihilation is that they value the audience's opinion of them. The reason Humbert is so like trying to convince us that he is an okay person is because it's clear that he is talking to someone with a higher sense of authority than him. He thinks he needs to convince the person because he like respects their opinion. If he was talking to Lolita, he would never talk in the way that he is talking in this book, but he is feeling like the person he's talking to is worth convincing. If you want to see a full-length video on that, you can watch the hundreds that are on YouTube, or subscribe to my channel and wait till I upload it, but there's plenty. But if you, I don't know. Another story that I think is very much in this category that doesn't get talked about enough as including in this category is 500 Days of Summer. 500 Days of Summer is a movie about a guy meeting a girl and getting slightly obsessed with her. I had a very hard time watching this movie because it's so clear what they're trying to get at, and it just hurts. It's just painful. It's just painful. I just felt it was a heartbreaking movie. Every sad part felt inevitable, and every happy part felt like just a tape over an already cracked surface. What you understand very quickly from the movie is that it's a couple that are going to break up.
I think we should stop seeing each other.
And I wouldn't even consider that a spoiler, because you're supposed to like see the relationship as, okay, this is going to end. Why didn't it work? And it's just kind of him being a bit crazy, and it's so interesting because he is not seen as crazy. Like, if you just watch it blind, you would not consider him crazy, because in these like romantic movies, it's so normal for the main character to be crazy. Like, I feel like we don't really address that enough, of how insane love stories are in movies, like those like Hallmark love stories, and maybe not romanticized as much as it is. It's just a very honest depiction of how a hopeless romantic can see a relationship fading out. I was hoping there would be some kind of a, oh no, they cheated, or no, like something to point at, but they are just not compatible as people, and that hurts. That fucking hurts. Is it clear that I struggled with this movie? Jesus Christ. Ugh. You might be thinking it's weird that I include this story inside of this video, because it's not a story about a guy who is manipulating the story to better fit himself. He's just telling the story as least how we can assume to be the truth. But he doesn't have to, because he's manipulating the story in the form of the story. Like, the romantic movie genre is at itself so manipulative, so we don't even address the weird fucking conclusion he comes to, because we are just used to it. So they are using our knowledge of romantic movies against us, which is just so clever, and I don't even think that was intentional, or like so Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the main character, has said in interviews to like Playboy that he is playing a obsessed character who gets obsessed with a girl and kind of gets an unhealthy attachment to like the idea of her. He's very much the nice guy. You know, that is fair. That is a very fair assumption, and I agree with that, but I'm not convinced the writers fully intended that. I feel like they just wanted it to be like a romantic movie, and then kind of her being the bad guy for not following the script. But it's so insane for us to just assume that someone would follow the script. Like, if the story of 500 Days of Summer would be a real story, which it is, or it's based on a real story by the one of the writers, Scott Neustadter. It's like based on one of his previous relationships, and I think he just saw this girl as it was based on as being the wrong one, because he just saw this girl, oh my god, she's amazing, I will do anything for her. But that is weird, that is creepy, that is not how a person should act in a healthy relationship. And the fact that so many people watch the movie and be like, no, she is the asshole, I think is so like clear of the problem. Like that is that I think it's such a honest reflection of bad men, of how they are treating women. But it's kind of like a mirror, you know, it's like showing so clearly of what the writers are seeing. This story being manipulative, I don't think was really an intention, But because of that, I think it's such an amazing example of a manipulative story, because it's just manipulating in the way you wouldn't expect it to. It's not lying, it's not changing the truth, it's just playing what you would assume to be what they should be doing, and the fact that he is following his script feels like she should be doing the same. It doesn't matter if she doesn't want to be in a relationship with him, it doesn't matter if she doesn't like him, the point is that she's giving off the signals as if she is the girl to like convince over and fall in love with and like show that love is worth it. But that is just weird. That is just a weird thing to do. You shouldn't convince a girl that love is meaningful. You should just find a girl that believes in the same thing as you. And he does it in such an amazing way that he even like convinces the audience to be on his side. And I think a big part of that is just us being like with the main character. But this is definitely one of those movies you have to watch more than once, because, or at least like have prior knowledge, just like you. And I think me telling you this is like a perfect way for you to like go and watch the movie, because it's now you like have this prior knowledge, and it's gonna make you enjoy the movie a lot more. That's what I think, at least. I don't think spoilers like hurt that much. Maybe I'm very controversial in that. I don't think spoilers like ruin that much, at least not in my opinion. Like, yes, if you are like trying to plan something out, like if it's a series you're trying to watching, and then you're thinking about the last episode, how it's gonna end, and you get spoiled, like, yeah, that sucks. But about movies, like stories that are self-contained, I don't think spoilers do that much badly. It just hurts when you have a prior expectation of it. If it's like a series of movies or a series, maybe you're disagreeing. And if you're disagreeing with me, please do not write in the comments about how wrong I am and boost this video in the algorithm, because that would be awful. That would be awful. That would hurt my feelings so much. So please don't do that. If you are on your phone, please give this video some like hype points. I don't know what that means, but I also know that I have acquired so many of them, so like better give me some, you know, make the rich richer over here, huh? If you want to see a similar video but about video games, it should be on screen right now if it's released. If it's not released, then it's some other fucking random video, and you better subscribe to see when that video comes out, if it comes out, which it will, but you know, yeah.